Iron farms, they're easy, right? That's the premise I had before going into this video, and not the opinion I'm leaving with. I thought I'd make a large scale iron farm, maybe it would take 20 or 30 hours to do, and I can move on with my life and on to the next video within a week. No, instead replace 20 or 30 hours with hundreds of hours. That would be more accurate. And was it worth it? No, not at all. But it's what I did, and past juiced full of spunk and iron aspirations at this point in time was trying to find a village to settle at. It doesn't need to be a village, but unfortunately we have to rely on villages for the farm's operations, so it's easier being somewhere where there are already villagers. Makes sense, right? At least it did for me. I put a few into a makeshift village breeder, which was very much like my trade hall, a wooden box, except this one had no windows to the outside world. But it was obviously better living conditions than they were used to, because really in truth I only transported one villager into the breeder. The other three came of their own accord. Granted, they probably didn't realise by volunteering themselves their lives would never be the same again, but they'd at least have a purpose, and you know, some people spend their entire existences searching for meaning, so am I really such a bad guy? The answer of course is yes, but it'd be a harmonious relationship. I give them purpose, they provide me iron, a win-win situation, 99% of that win being mine. Now, in all honesty, looking back, I should have spent longer looking for a desert village rather than settling on any old village, simply because the terrain is often flatter in a desert, and if it's not, it's a lot less of a pain to flatten. In fact, if I'd spent the time searching for a better village, this farm wouldn't have taken nearly as long, and you'll see why. The terrain around this village, as you can see, was anything but flat, and so before I could start on the iron farm itself, I needed to map out the dimensions of the area I was going to have to clear to make room for the farm itself. And it's a chunky boy. The dirt, easy to remove, not a problem. The stone, that's another story, and seeing as I don't have a beacon, progress was slow. At the time, I didn't care. It wasn't a big deal. It's not a 100 days video, there's no deadline, I'm not strapped for time, there's no pressure. During the excavation, I found a skeleton spawner. I probably won't use it, but I thought I'd show it, and got a couple of music discs from the chest. And this is why having backup tools is useful. I know a few of you have made fun of me for it. Why would you need backup tools in a hardcore world? Well, it's for instances like this when you don't pay attention and break them. Or you don't want to kill momentum by having to go repair your singular tool when it comes close to breaking. Personally, I think it makes perfect sense. I'd like to say this portion of the video is the part that consisted of the most amount of work, but I didn't realise I was only getting started. And so while all I did for the next 9 hours or so was remove blocks for where the iron farm was going to go, it was only a drop in the bucket for what was to come. And yes, I regret not getting a beacon right off the bat. But you live and learn, and I'm still alive, and I'd like to say I've learned. Oh, and I broke another pickaxe. Persistence at the end of the day is what counts, and here was the area primed, prepped and ready for an iron farm like the world has never seen. First, however, I didn't have the resources to start making one. The tutorial I was following laid out the materials needed for one layer of the farm, but it is scalable above the one layer, and of course I wanted more than the one layer. So for the start, I'd grab everything needed for the single layer, then, while the farm is operational with that first layer in place, I can work on the other layers. And the point of multiple layers of the farm is to reduce AFK time. Again, bringing up a 100-day series. If it were a 100-day series, I wouldn't AFK, but seeing as this series is more episodic in nature, I can do all the AFK I need. Still, if I can shorten the amount of AFK time I have to do, you know, I'd love to. And so I can't really say much more than I started work on the farm. It wasn't complicated, just following the tutorial video. If only I was intuitive enough to figure out a design myself, but then why would I when there are so many conveniently made guides on how to do it? What's the point in thinking when you can have someone do it for you? Alright, so here's the first part of the farm in all its glory. The only thing left to do is the thing I want to do the least, transport the villagers and zombies, because neither of which want to do what you want them to do. Actually no, that's not entirely true. Zombies are pretty easy to navigate. It's the bloody brain dead villagers that all of a sudden become sentient when you want to move them, and decide of their own accord it's in their best interest to make it as difficult as humanly possible to move from point A to point B. So the plan is to use these temporary staircases alongside mine tracks. That's right, the good old-fashioned minecart method. A method only an option if I've got the iron to spare to set up the gig. This is all the iron I collected during the renovating of this area, and is why I wanted Fortune 3 onto one of my picks. I also did the coal because I'm always running out of fuel and I have a shulker's worth of coal ore, so while I'm doing the iron it makes sense to do both. I was still skeptical the villagers were going to fuck things up for me somehow, so I villager proofed above each of the villager cells where I'd be removing them from the minecarts and kicking them into their new homes. Laid out all the regular rails ready for the migration, but still needed power rails for this to work, so that meant taking multiple trips back and forth to the trade hall to purchase redstone from my clerics, and also take the opportunity to transport thousands and thousands of blocks I'd picked up clearing the area for the iron farm. I also took the opportunity to repair my tools and gain levels. I'm grateful to Past Me for installing the chests for storing the ender pearls, because it would be awful if I were to miss out on the hundreds of ender pearls I didn't need. I also spent time collecting gunpowder at the regular painfully slow mob farm. I'm planning on making an official creeper farm at some point. I'm stressing at some point so I don't overcommit to anything. That's my way out if someone asks me why I haven't built a dedicated creeper farm, because I'm going to do it at some point. Back at the soon to be flourishing iron farm, I added the powered rails at regular intervals around the tracks for giving the minecarts that extra oomph they needed to ascend the staircases. Alright, with everything in place, the next stage of the plan was afoot. I waited until night when the villagers would be least active and therefore most easily kidnappable, kicked them out of their beds, captured them in boats, rowed as many of them as I could to the other side of the room, segregated them from the rest of the villagers with dirt, so when the sun rose, other villagers wouldn't climb into the boats and prevent me from getting in to row them away, because, let's be honest, we all know the other villagers are going to try and stop their friends from being taken. Then, I went around the outside of the breeder, took down the wall they were behind, rode them one at a time near to the minecart loading station. Perfect job. The hardest part were getting the buggers into the minecarts. Rest assured, as time went on, I did become more competent at doing this. At the start, it was a bit of a mess, and that was true when getting the first villager out of the minecart and through the hole in the roof of his eternal cell. He kept pushing back against me, but after all the work I'd put in, I was not going to let his human rights screw things up for me, and I won the battle. And it set a precedent for the rest of the villagers. Besides, in this current housing market, getting a 3-bed place with lovely views looking over the land for free is a damn good deal. Yeah, space would be limited, but that's often the case with a first-time property. Now, yes, the villagers were complying more than the first, but that didn't mean it still wasn't a massive pain to move them. It was a long-winded process and is the only reason I put off building iron farms. The zombies, believe it or not, and you will believe it because I'm telling you to, were actually more frustrating to move, despite me saying before that they were easier to move than villagers. My own fault, I had the wrong setup for dropping them into their new home. The first one got around my trapdoor and caused havoc by falling into the water. I also found that the stair blocks weren't fully wet out because of another failure on my part, meaning the spawned iron golems would prevent themselves from falling to their death. The solution was easy. I had the stair blocks in the wrong place. They just needed moving one block adjacent to their current position. After this set of teething problems were dealt with, I got the rest of the zombies in position, and we, as in me, was in business. Look at this beautiful sight. A sight completely unremarkable to many of you, but remember, this is only a single layer farm, and to be fair, while it is probably enough for me moving forward, I'm still going to be adding at least 2 additional layers on top. Complete torture when it comes to the villagers, but the end result will be incredible. That's what I'm telling myself at least. Anyway, the farm can spawn 8 iron golems at once. And going AFK at the iron farm for around 20 minutes, I got around 8 stacks of iron, so that works out at 24 stacks an hour, but in reality, there are so many iron golems roaming around the area because of the villager breeder that the actual output is probably being nerfed as a result. But enough looking. I needed to get back to work. For the second layer, I really didn't need to consult the tutorial much, if at all, now that it was committed to memory, so getting the layer itself put in place was much quicker. If only I could leave it like this without any villagers or zombies, I'd be tempted to build it to height limit. Also, remember what I said moments ago when I said the iron farm is getting nerfed? I was keeping an eye on the first layer and seeing that the iron golems weren't spawning as quickly as they should, and it was because of these guys roaming about. I knew it. I'd kill them this time, but it's not that big of a deal. Eventually they will be dealt with, but I'm not going to keep on killing them, but just keep in mind that they are nerfing my farm. My previous track needed extending to reach the second layer. I'd used netherrack this time as the temporary blocks. I also had 3 villagers waiting in the wings ready to be sent at a moment's notice, and the moment's notice started moments later. I got on with transporting the villagers. I did accidentally drop a villager into the water. Trust me when I say I was going to save him, but then thought of the effort that would consist of and decided to let the chips fall where they may. I watched him as fate took him into the pit, in what I can only assume was his death. Now, it wasn't actually shown on camera, so maybe we should expect to see him in Hardcore Season 3 seeking revenge. Only joking, there isn't going to be a Season 3 because I'm never going to die. The zombies this time were much easier than the villagers for this layer, and quicker too, seeing as I had a method. And like that, I had 2 layers of the iron farm now. In theory, that doubles the output. Emptied out the iron from the chest to the collection point. It was a lot of iron. I'm now going to wait roughly 20 minutes to compare how much iron we get this time around, and I think I got 8 stacks last time is what I said, so we're looking for around 15 to 16 stacks of iron. I actually got a little over 11 stacks of iron. However, I forgot what time I started waiting, so it wasn't an accurate test. Plus, there's still a lot of iron golems in the area because the villagers at the breeder have spawned them in again. Plus, there's iron golems that are somehow able to defy the flow of water for a period of time before eventually falling. I might fix that at a later date, but if they are eventually falling, I really couldn't care less for the time being. If it gets out of hand, then maybe I might fix it, but for now, well, what's the issue? That's 2 layers down, now for the third. Why? Because as people always say, 3 is better than 2. That's why people try to open a third eye, because 3 is better than 2. I didn't have the resources for a third layer, so I had to spend a little bit of prep time getting what was needed. But when I did, I built the third layer even quicker than the second. Understandable, considering my efficiency is increasing. It's really the villagers that take up so much time, and you haven't had to experience any of it. You've just had a convenient little snapshot into the long-suffering pain I've had dealing with them. But as long as the prep work for them is done beforehand, I can at least mitigate some of the pain it takes in transporting them. The prep work involved a healthy amount of powered rails, simply in order to get the villagers up the ascending slope of the staircase. This was the layer I changed things up on as well. Up until now, I've been putting 3 villagers at a time into the minecarts and sending them on their way, because each cell of the iron farm can only house 3 villagers each. This time, I laid out all 24 minecarts needed to move all 24 villagers for this third layer. And no, it didn't cost much, not by my standards now that I'm iron rich, and it's nothing more than a commonplace resource, not an eyelid battered. It was at this point in time I felt 3 layers of the farm would be enough for this video. Originally I was going to keep going for as many as possible, but now I'm thinking, what's the point? 3 is enough, and I'm really not enjoying moving all of these villagers. I mean, with this I'll be getting thousands of iron per hour as it is. What's the point in continuing to add layers just to show off to people on the internet what an outstanding hardcore player I am? See, when I put it like that, it actually now sounds tempting. Maybe in the future I can build the farm up more if it really bothers me, but for the time being, this would be the last time I would have to transport the villagers. And I was happy. Overall, having all 24 of them ready to go in minecarts worked out a little quicker. Doing one process all at once before moving on to the next rather than doing part of a process, then working on part of the next to go back to the preceding process to continue doesn't cut it any longer. Before I kicked the minecarts into motion, I took a trip back to the trade hall to buy bread, then returned to the iron farm breeder to feed it to the remaining villagers. Just in case I changed my mind about wanting a 4th layer, breeding the villagers so I'd have enough for a 4th layer seemed prudent. One by one, I sent the villagers on their way. Like the other 2 layers, it was a tedious process, something I'm fairly certain I haven't mentioned to you guys. Once in place, it was back to zombie luring, using my own flesh and blood, my very life essence as the bait. That's how committed to the cause I was, and it wasn't easy. If I'd been considering making a 4th layer to the farm, that ended here. There were too many mobs spawning at ground level that got in the way. The 3rd zombie I lured got killed by an iron golem who spawned immediately before he had time to drop into the cell I'd prepared for him. The second time I tried to lure zombie number 3 to his cell, he was again killed by another spawning iron golem. 3rd time for zombie 3 and it was a success. Like I said before, 3 is better than 2, even in painstaking attempts. I almost lost zombie number 4 to sunlight, but managed to get him into place just before he roasted to death. He's most likely on the verge of death, but as long as he doesn't take a hit, and there's no reason why he should, he's going to survive. Again, waiting for roughly 20 minutes to see what the rates of the farm are now, and it provides a little over 16 stacks of iron ingots. Not too shabby, especially when I know it's not running at optimal efficiency currently. So that's the iron farm finished, quote unquote, but not really. I've still got other plans, and it involves wither skeleton hunting, and after not very long I wondered why I wanted to kill them with manual labour, especially thinking how well the iron farm works at automatically delivering me iron. So farm number 2 of the video is now commencing, a wither skeleton farm. I needed nether bricks for the farm. Originally I was waiting for smelters to smelt netherrack down into nether bricks, seeing as I have a huge quantity of the block, but it was taking too long, so I'm just collecting the stuff manually in the nether. Yup. And that extended into the end too, chipping away at the obsidian towers. It's the best place to get obsidian, while in the end I spent a little more time collecting levels at the enderman farm. It's sort of becoming a bit of a tradition now. Back in the nether I needed to find a fortress in a soul sand valley or warped forest for the farm to work according to the video I was following. I realised fairly soon after starting my search that the fortress near to my portal is actually in a soul sand valley, so Never mind, I needed to find the highest point of the fortress, and that crossed into a nether waste biome, so I'm gonna go looking for another fortress. The second fortress I found was both mostly covered up and in the wrong biome, so that's a no-go. The third fortress was in a Sosan Valley, and again mostly covered by other blocks, but the Sosan Valley made it a winner. I did have a bit of a scare when I jumped off the edge thinking I had my elytra on, but forgot I'd swapped it out for my chest piece, so nothing more than a minor concussion. Before I start on the farm, I made a makeshift road back to my portal so I can get back here in the future without forgetting where it is. I always take the coordinates of places, but it's easier following a road. Once what I was calling a road was in place, I got to work on the farm. In the process, I killed a wither skeleton and obtained a skull, so that's already one down for a beacon block. The farm needed me to head onto the nether roof. I wasn't certain I had the method right, but I did manage to get onto it without dying or getting stuck in the bedrock, and I could continue the rest of the farm. Again, I fell from a high place because I forgot I didn't have my elytra on again, and then again I survived. There was a lot of fiddling about with this farm, with the work I had to do on the nether roof, then connect the portal to the overworld. I did everything the tutorial asked of me to the letter, but in the end it didn't work. My only reasoning is that there are too many spawnable blocks near to the designated spawning platform. If I'm going to fix this, it'll mean spending so many hours putting bottom slabs everywhere. I'm not going to do that, so I went back to manually searching. And before anyone says no, all the portals were properly linked up, I checked them myself. So that's the only thing I can think of, is there were just too many spawnable blocks for wither skeletons to spawn on, other than the spawning platform that I'd made. At least I only had 2 more to find because of the one I luckily obtained earlier, so it didn't take too long. That now meant I could summon and trap the wither under the end portal in what can only be described as a joke of a fight. It was more like an execution. Crafted a beacon block and returned to the iron farm. Now, while the farm is technically complete, the area around the farm is a mess. I want to remove a large perimeter of blocks around the farm itself to make it more professional looking, I suppose. And safer, I mapped out the dimensions of the perimeter. The 4 towers you can see on screen are the 4 corners of the perimeter I want to dig out. A huge amount of land, but on the plus I can now build a beacon, so insta-mining stone will be a thing. First step of the process, get rid of all the trees. There were about, 70 or 80 in total, not many. Second step, remove all unnecessary structures. The villager houses and my village breeder, now that it has run its course. I left the beds for the time being because it's kind of nice sleeping as part of a community, or maybe it's because it's the last bit of power I have, being able to determine where the villagers sleep, and by extension where they live, despite having freed them, because the bars now keeping them to this area were mental, and more powerful than any physical bars I could ever put in place to hold them captive. Third step, remove all dirt, or as much of the dirt as I could. Ignoring stone at the moment, I think it'd be marginally quicker doing this. After not much time, here was a section of the area with all the dirt removed and stone underneath uncovered. A lot of blocks to get rid of, and not to mention the rest of the dirt that needs removing. A quick check in on the iron farm told me all I needed to know. A couple of chests were full, and rather than spend time turning them into iron blocks, I simply added additional chests and hoppers to the collection system. I'm fast forwarding a lot here because I was doing nothing but removing dirt, and forgive me for not wanting to bore you to death. Here is the aftermath of all the dirt removed. It took a lot of hours and a lot of work with the amount of stone on display. I could safely say it was going to be a nightmarish task removing all of these blocks, even with a beacon. Here's all the chests of dirt collected. It's a lot. Yes, some of these are empty waiting for stone, but 100% money back guaranteed they're going to be filled to the brim in no time. And who knows how much more to store them all in. Another thing, I broke 2 of my shovels during the process from lack of focus, or maybe too much focus, but on the wrong thing, and the ones that did survive I had to repair at the Enderman farm. As for the iron golem issue around the base, they've been steadily on the incline because of the Roman villagers. They're able to spawn them all over. I'll get rid of them at some point, like most things I say I'll do. Now, if you've read the title, you might have been wondering why this iron farm drove me insane. Yes, transporting the villagers was the first step, but if I'm being honest, it's this job I'm about to take on. Removing all of the stone blocks. Looking back now, I know how many countless hours it took me to clear the entire area. And again, in hindsight, it would have been better to create a world eater, but I have no fucking clue how to do that, and I need a good knowledge of redstone, something I don't have. I am going to learn how to do it at some point, but yeah, this was a pain. And so stage 4 began, and as I said, I had no clue as to the scale of the task I was taking on. I think mostly because I've been led astray from watching other YouTubers clear large areas in what they say is a few hours, and it it did not end up being that short for me. Maybe I'm doing something, maybe my haste 2 beacon and netherite pick is slower than everyone else's. That's not the case. I know I've just taken on an area larger than I should have, but man, it took so long. Fast forward a little bit in time and all of my picks are at the point of breaking, apart from the ones which is my Fortune 3 pick that I'm not going to be using for clearing the area. I'm just going to be using that for converting the ore blocks into the actual ore itself. Took a trip to the Enderman farm. I should make a portal at the iron farm so I don't have to fly back to the trade hall to get into the nether to access the stronghold portal. Again, and another job for another time. Okay, so this is what I've done so far. As you can see, my beacon is now high above us, where I've removed all of the blocks that were also above us at this point. It's plain to see that there's still a ton of work still to do. I'm going to come back when this section is done. Okay, I'm back, and here's an update on how many blocks I've now collected. A lot of chests full of stone, dirt, and any other block I've collected in the process. A lot of chests. And I'm not even halfway. Here's also the coal, iron, and copper ore I've collected as a byproduct throughout this process. The iron ore isn't needed, but coal and copper are nice to have. Not that I've ever used copper for anything apart from the occasional lightning rod in other series. And the grand unveiling, a look at the area I've been working on. This took hours and hours and hours to do by mining. I'm doing it in sections because my beacon's effects can only reach so far, but I'm hopeful the other sections won't take as long because I purposely started with the largest section. So I guess it's downhill from here. An extremely gradual downhill, but it's still downhill. Remember the skeleton spawner early on into this video? Well, it's still around, but now high in the air rather than underground. I didn't have the heart to mine it. It's like a floating reminder of the work that went into this place. As far as the next section goes, I think this is the area with the most amount of stone blocks now, so I'm going to be tackling this to get it out of the way. Also, here's the statistics of the blocks I've mined. Stone and dirt are in the top places, with stone overwhelmingly in first place. And my iron farm has now produced thousands of iron at this point, and will continue to produce thousands of iron. I'm like an oil baron, except I'm a baron of iron instead of oil. Okay, I'm fast forwarding again, and if I'm being honest, I'm not filming much of me mining the blocks out, because why would I? It's so long-winded and repetitive for you guys to watch, and believe it or not, the file size takes up so much space. It's unbelievable. An hour of footage seems to be anywhere from 10 to 20 gigabytes. It's insane. Anyway, you can see the progress I'm making, slowly but surely. Not so slowly for you, because I'm skipping the work out. But again, here's another look at the mining statistics. The numbers are getting out of control now. And so too are the chests with all of the blocks. I have to keep flying off and chopping trees because I've used all of my wood on chests. Oh, there is something new. As you can see, I now have a platform the villagers are living on, and with a fence around the outside. Originally I was going to get rid of this area, but then I thought, what if I do want to build up the farm some more in the future? Not in this video, you know, I don't want to do that, but maybe, you know, further down the road. Having villagers on standby is going to be good. The fence around the outside is for their own protection. A lot of them kept jumping off the side, again being their obnoxiously intractable selves, trying to ruin my plans. Here's another view of the platform floating in the sky, because I don't think I actually showed you properly. Like I said, it's going to stay, and it's far enough away from the iron farm that it shouldn't actually affect the rates. Look, here's some of the villagers that jumped off of the platform. They now have no home and no idea where to go, and as far as I'm concerned, outside of my jurisdiction, and therefore beyond my care. So now this is the rest of the area I've got to remove. Again, I'm going to do it off camera because I really don't want to clog up my computer with the amount of footage I need to commit to memory. Just know it has been a long process, and I have watched a lot of YouTube, and you can be sure I watched even more YouTube while removing the last section. But that is now that. In some ways I regret doing it, but in other ways I don't, because the place looks cooler now. It was completely unnecessary, but then the best things often are. And my statistics are pretty crazy at this point. Almost 800,000 stone blocks removed, and there's a few chests to show for it. I'm going to have to make a world storage system at some point where I keep all of my items. And here's the final count for the ore blocks I've made. The coal and copper ore are the ones I picked up the most of. The iron, I still got a fair amount of, but with an iron farm, it's lost all value to me now. Is the project finally completed? No, because I sort of got it into my head that it would be a major flex to cover the entire perimeter floor in iron blocks. Crazy, yes. I realised how much iron that was going to take, and looking back and thinking back, I don't know why I decided to do this, but by this point I already had thousands of iron blocks at my disposal. My iron farm rates had improved, so in my mind it was going to be a quick, easy job. Well, maybe not an easy job, you know, fairly quick, because I had so many iron blocks. The idea wasn't to start at one end and fill in every space until I reached the other, but like in the Melon series, map out where I wanted the light source blocks to be placed, which in this instance were torches, using a grid pattern. Once the grid is in place, put down the torches at the regular intervals. I don't need to do this, but I think it will look neater having them at set distances from each other. Plus, I know now that the entire area will be covered and that it will allow me to work through the night without any mobs spawning. I'm surprised how many iron blocks I actually have still left over. I know I'm not going to have enough for the entire area, and I do plan to go AFK until I have enough, but I'd built up a lot more iron than I thought, and so I began filling the perimeter one grid at a time until I ran out of iron, which didn't take long because most of it had gone into making the grid. So I'm going to go AFK until I feel I have enough iron to complete the area. Okay, I'm back after those famous AFK words, and for you watching, it's been like a few seconds. For me, it has not been a few seconds. This was another project I regret taking on for this video, because I have literally left my computer running 24/7. I didn't switch it off once. Luckily, I'm a deep sleeper because I didn't realise how loud my computer was until I tried sleeping with it on. I've literally spent hundreds of hours on this video, most of it AFKing, simply so I can say I have an iron floor to flex. Why have I done this? And I still don't even know if what I have is going to be enough. I'm just guessing. I'm only on episode 2. This is really not good. I cannot be doing this for every episode. Eventually, and to my dismay, I actually did run out of iron blocks. I didn't have enough to finish the area, and honestly at this point I'm not going to do any more AFK work at the farm. I'm done. Alright, I'm done with this AFK for iron at the moment. I think it's time to call a day on the iron floor. Most of it is done. I will finish it at a later date. It is driving me insane. There is only one more thing I want to do for this video, and that is to put glass around the iron farm, because I feel like it will look better. But not regular glass, black stained glass, which I need to get black dye from, hence me culling the local squid populace. I outlined where I wanted the glass to go with, well, the glass itself. I thought black stained glass would look aesthetically pleasing, enough at least that I didn't feel compelled to do some intricate build, and after spending hundreds of hours to simply get to this point, I'm not going to apologise for that. Of course, like with anything in Minecraft, one job leads to several more, and I found I don't have enough fuel for smelting all the glass needed, so I'm now placing all of the coal ore blocks I'd collected during the renovation of this entire area. I don't need to do all of them, but I thought I might as well, seeing as I'm doing a portion of them. If I'm doing a portion of them, I might as well do all of them. And it means I've got fuel for the future too. And here are all the coal blocks on display. This massive collection towers up to build limit. And this is all the coal I gained from mining with a Fortune 3 pick. I recall once seeing Filza having a shulker box full of coal blocks and thinking, what an incredible feat that is. How could one person obtain all that coal? But actually, now that I've done it myself, it's not as hard as I first thought. Squid hunting isn't that bad either. They spawn regularly enough that I could build up a fairly decent quantity of ink sacs without issue, which I used to stain the glass black and place around the iron farm. And when I ran out of glass, I would head back to the lake to kill more squids to turn more glass into stained glass to put more around the farm. And I did this on repeat until every bit of glass had been placed, and now I could finally say the farm was complete. Like I said in the beginning of the video, was it worth it? Probably not, no. I could have just left it after building those first 3 layers of the farm, but I can't deny it looks awesome with the black glass box around it. Although, there isn't any iron here at all really, not from what I was expecting, with the amount of time it's taken me to mine the coal and get the glass around the farm. But okay, so I've been watching the iron farm, and it's pretty apparent iron golems aren't spawning at the rate they once were, and in some cases not at all. There's only one thing I can think of that's changed since it was last operating perfectly, and that's the glass, because there has been iron that's built up, but then it stopped. So I'm thinking, as I've built the glass up, for some reason it stopped the iron golems spawning as they should. So basically, after all that work, the iron farm no longer works. Oh my days, you've got to be kidding me. It's got to be the glass. I'm like 99% sure that's what it is. I mean, it's the only thing that's changed. It's the only thing it can be. So now I'm going to have to remove all the glass and see what happens. You know what? That I can do that off camera or for whatever. I'm not going to do that in this video. You know, let me just show you what the farm looks like with shaders. I'm going to leave it on screen for a bit so you can have a look, because I think it looks pretty fucking cool with shaders on. But anyway, that is it for this video. That's going to be it. I can't be doing it any longer. I've got to pull it to an end. If you have managed to make it this far, to this point of the video, and enjoyed what you saw, then, you know, like the video and make sure to subscribe so you can catch future episodes. Last year, it's kind of crazy, I was thinking about this. Last year I was trying to get to 60 subscribers. Now we're coming up to 60,000. Crazy numbers, absolutely crazy numbers. That's getting on for half the population of where I live, which, when I put it into context like that, boggles my mind. So thanks to everyone who supported me. Yeah, thanks for watching. Alright, bye.